Topic 3. Also from Patreon. This one comes from Christopher Knutson. After subscribing back in July, I decided to go back and watch some of the exclusive content, specifically the JRPG episode. On that episode, Colin states that Ni no Kuni was the best JRPG from the PS3 and 360 generation. This made me consider what JRPGs I thought may be better, and I landed on Lost Odyssey. I believe that this was the best JRPG of that gen, and was overlooked by most gamers, even JRPG players. This leads to my question. What are games that you personally believe to be great, but were heavily overlooked both at the time they came out and now? Love the show. Keep up the good work. First thing that comes to my mind is Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze.
That was the Wii one?
That is the Wii U one.
Okay.
The Wii one, I don't think was overlooked.
Okay.
I think people liked it a lot, and I think that it got, nice reviews, and people overall saw that as a nice return to form for Donkey Kong and all this stuff, because we got a couple weird ones in between with Donkey Kong 64 and all that shit. So getting a nice 2D platformer is great. Even if people wanted Retro to be doing other things, whatever. I enjoyed that game a lot. Tropical Freeze comes out, and it's at a time when no one cared about the Wii U already. Like, it hit that point, and it's like, all right, cool, more Donkey Kong Country. Like, you need to kind of want that to want that. I wanted it. I like Donkey Kong Country. I think it's a great 2D platforming series. And this one, it was one that I'm like, all right, I'll play it when I play it. And I played it like months after it came out, and I was like, oh, fuck, this is good. Like, this is really good. Way better than Returns. And I liked Returns a lot. And it made me feel like I felt playing the original Donkey Kong Country games. And I think that's because so much thought was put into the feel of the game, the look of the game, and the aesthetics of it. And the soundtrack made by David Wise, the same guy that did Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2. And it's what made those games a thing. It's what made them like, it was the glue that held them all together.
Sure.
And I think even Donkey Kong Country 3 kind of missed out on that a bit. But I think that because this game was on Wii U and because it came out at the time that it did, it was by far the most overshadowed Donkey Kong game in a long time. And even more than that, I think that Donkey Kong isn't necessarily one of Nintendo's like heavy hitters. So it's not Mario, it's not Zelda, it's not Metroid. So even for Nintendo users, I think it's overlooked. And I think that's why I want to give that a shout out, because I can talk about a whole bunch of other things, but when a game is a Nintendo game that Nintendo people are overlooking, I think that's a problem.
Sure.
I actually played that Donkey Kong game, and this is a great example. It goes back to the first topic. I only played it for an hour or so at IGN, and I'm formed my opinion that too heavy, too much weight. Didn't like it. Lost Odyssey definitely was overlooked. I mean, there was a lot of early Xbox 360 games, JRPGs, when Microsoft was making their kind of Japanese gambit with Infinite Undiscovery and Blue Dragon and a bunch of games that they shouldn't have stranded on Xbox 360, but that's their fault for making that deal with Microsoft. Games that are overlooked. I still think Vanquish is probably one of the major games that's overlooked. This is a platinum third-person shooter. A lot of people ask me, like, what's a third-person shooter that plays better than Metal Gear Solid 5? Vanquish. Vanquish plays better than most games, and I think is a fantastic fucking game. And it's often been said between me and a friend of mine that it should have been a G.I. Joe game. That would have been awesome. It would have been an awesome, I fucking love Vanquish. It's such a great game. I think that there are a lot of overlooked kind of digital products too, but I even think like a lot of Housemarque games are overlooked, like in terms of who's playing them. I mean, they have a great reputation in the PlayStation community and hardcore PlayStation community, but their games are like uniformly awesome. They don't make bad games. They don't even make good games. They make really great games. And so I think that any one of their games that isn't being played by millions of people, I think is being criminally underplayed and underrated.
But I mean, you talk about the stuff that's overlooked, anything early PSN. You know what I mean? Like, I stand by how awesome Calling All Cars was. Calling All Cars was so much fun as a local experience, and then even playing online. You know what I mean? But that was like wave one of like right after Super Rub-a-Dub and Championship Sprint came Calling All Cars. You know what I mean? And so like nobody had the system because it was so ridiculously expensive. But it's so much fun. It's so much. That is one of those games that if that comes out right now on PlayStation 4 as a new product, it's gonna not. Don't get me wrong, this isn't to insult Rocket League or anything like that, but it would blow up, not that big, but it would get big. There would be a thing. There would be DLC. There would be support. Yeah. People would be behind it. Whereas this one, it came out and just languish. You know what I mean? But even when the PlayStation Network has its wheels and is going, like not enough people play Shatter. You know what I mean? Come on,
Yeah,
Shatter was
Shatter's-
awesome.
yeah,
You know
Shatter
what I
was a
mean?
great
It's
game.
one of those games. Every time we talk about it, people are still like, "Oh, right, whatever. That was cool." You know what I mean? I liked The Last Guy a lot. It was a quirky, weird ass
Last
game,
Guy.
but it was cool and it was fun. And why not give it a shot? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like that was the whole thing with the PSN is like people thought it was such a redheaded stepchild, and PSN was thrown together, not in the best shape back then, but still, it had great games.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I like to look at this. Look at this question more through the lens of like really, not really old, but just old games. Because I think that it's always strange to me when people don't. We talk about a lot of the NES or SNES classics, for instance, and we bring up the Nintendo first party stuff. But even in that family of first party games, there are games that are overlooked, like Star Tropics, for instance. Or you look at early SNES games that were overlooked. I think ActRaiser is still one of the most brilliant games ever made, and a lot of people don't. It's a city builder and a side-scrolling action game. It's fucking brilliant. It's a brilliant idea, and there's nothing like it before or since. And they ruined it with ActRaiser 2, but it was such a great. That was an early Enix game. Quintet, I think, made it too. Defunct Japanese developer. So there are games like that, or talking about Japanese role-playing games. I think there are, especially in the PS1 era, which I think is really the golden era of Japanese role-playing games. There's a lot of quirky, weird games like Thousand Arms that people didn't play. Even Wild Arms 2. Wild Arms is a really beloved JRPG, as everyone knows. I love it, and a lot of people do. But the sequel is really good as well. So there's all these little gems hidden in there. But as we know, like as games come out, like some things just get cast aside, and we just don't get to play them. And then the longer time goes on, the more these games just get buried, and you kind of have to rely on the opinions and the kind of the recommendations of others to go back or not go back and play some of these games. But I mean, I can write you a list of games. I mean, the most recent, I think, super criminally overlooked game was probably
Taco Master.
It was probably Spec Ops: The Line, which I think is an amazing third-person shooter, both mechanically and in terms of its story. It's very geopolitical. It's very psychological and fucked up. As I've said before, there are a few games we look at when we play shooters. We're killing other people, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean like non-Americans or whatever. We're just killing although like when you play Wolfenstein, for instance, that you're killing the Nazis, or you're killing in Call of Duty the terrorists or whatever. But in Spec Ops: The Line, like there are times when you're killing American
Civilians.
like CIA agents and soldiers and stuff like you're fighting them, and they're speaking the same vernacular as you are to each other. It's just it's haunting. It's a totally haunting game. I absolutely adore that game. And so I think that's like one of the most criminally overlooked games for its character and setting and story alone, nonetheless its gameplay. But I think that this is a very subjective kind of question, because I think that like what do you base it on? Is it sales or
Buzz,
visibility, or buzz, or whatever? I think that it's just as easy to talk about games that there are games I definitely think too many people played. So it's so I think the question obviously goes both ways, but those are the ones that kind of
and the question's hard too, because like what's the difference between overlooked or underrated and all that stuff, and it kind of comes into it, because like a couple that come into my mind weren't necessarily overlooked, but I think there were aspects of them that were. Final Fantasy X-2, I think the battle system in that's great, and a lot of that was a response to Final Fantasy X being so radically different from the Final Fantasy before it, where it was not an active time battle. It was more just like turn-based, like really, really turn-based. And I enjoyed that a lot. But Final Fantasy X-2 really nailed the active time battle. And the whole battle system it had going was probably one of my favorite Final Fantasy, if not my favorite Final Fantasy battle systems ever. It was in a game that had, a story that wasn't exactly any of the other Final Fantasies or whatever. And it had a lot of other things. But the gameplay of it and the actual battle system was super awesome. Crash Team Racing is the best kart racer. It just really is. It's better than Mario Kart, and it's better than Diddy Kong and Little Big Planet and whatever the hell else there is.
Mod Nation Racers, you're saying? You're saying it's better than Mod Nation
I am.
Racers?
I'm definitely
I
saying
bet the
that.
load times were better.
But it's great. I mean, that game was super awesome. And to say it's overlooked, I'm not exactly is a true statement, because people really liked it a lot. It sold well and reviewed well and all that stuff.
Sure.
But I think it's overlooked when people look back on that generation and think kart racing, everyone jumps to Mario 64 and the memories they had with that. And I have memories of that too, for sure. But Crash, even then, I was like, this is better. Now I'm a Crash fanboy. But
of course,
the game is good. The game's really good, and the power-up system is good, and the power slide system and all that stuff is good, really good. And
Sleeping Dogs is overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
Sleeping Dogs is a great one that not enough people talk about.
And Ameler.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. You're right. Yeah, Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning.
Colin reviewed games.
If only you would have given him higher scores.
So pretty much Colin. Go on IGN. Look at the games Colin.
God,
reviewed.
Amalur was so good. Jesus Christ. Now you got me thinking of that. I was also going to say in line with your Crash one, one that will be dismissed just because I'm Greg Miller, but Ghostbusters, the video game, had no business being as good as it was.
That's actually a really good point.
Development hell, had all the voices, had a fun story, a bit, walked some very similar territory, but it was fun. And like they actually made being a Ghostbuster for like 8 hours or whatever interesting. If we had to switch it back and fight things differently.
I mean, that was a very interesting time just in terms of licensed games where they, for a year or two around there, they stopped doing just
garbage.
cash in garbage, right? And we got Spider-Man 2 and we got a couple like good ones early on, but like there was Batman, the Arkham games, there was the Transformer Cybertron games, and then there was Ghostbusters, and that was like, holy shit, this is like a turning point. And now Batman obviously is what it is now, but I think the Transformers games are overlooked too, because I never thought I'd get a Transformers game that good.
That was good, yeah.
And it was awesome. It was really awesome, really faithful, and especially after the movies, I expected it to be movie bullshit, and it wasn't. It was great. And I remember playing that Ghostbusters game and being thoroughly impressed by it.
Yeah.
The Zelda Oracle games, I also want to give a shout out to.
Yeah, shout
out. And again, not necessarily overlooked.
Yeah,
but
those games sold very well, but they're not games. No, they weren't developed by Nintendo, and people don't talk about them when they talk about, Link's Awakening comes up a lot, which I actually is like one of my least favorite Zelda games, as like the pinnacle of handheld Zelda. And then obviously, to a lesser extent, Minish Cap, or then, the ones on DS, which I also didn't like at all. But I do agree that those games are fucking cool, man, because those games really captured the essence of old Zelda at a time when Zelda was kind of changing on console. So, I totally agree that, I'm surprised that people don't bring up Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons. Those are fantastic games. Yeah, they're old now.
They had a sense of just adventure and fun that I think that Zelda, I remember originally having. And then now it's just kind of, you know what you're getting. You know what the races look like and whatever. But the Oracle games had, the characters were just like quirky and weird and new. And I enjoyed them a lot. And I also like the linking system and all that stuff. I mean, Game Boy was great with all that. For sure. Do you have any more, Greg? That topic brought to you by patreon.com/kindoffunnygames. Thank you all for supporting us and making this beautiful show happen. It is really, really appreciated. I don't know how long this thing goes on for.
It goes on a while, but he could start it early to end it.
30 seconds.
So we just have to fill 30 seconds while that goes?
It might be longer. You probably should have requested.
Patreon.com/kindoffunnygames.
You should have it. Yeah, you should have it. All right. Well, I'm just going to transition on into the fourth topic. Oh, for the third topic, Downhill Domination on PS2, which is really good. Moving on to the fourth topic.
Oni on PS2.
Onimusha 3.
Onimusha 3 sucks.
Colin.
I hate Onimusha 3.
I love Onimusha 3.
I hated it.
Oh, it's so good.
I hated it. I hated it so much.
So did you prefer 1 or 2 then?
2 was better than 1. But I think that 1 and 2 and 4
and 4. You're gonna motherfucking say 4 is better than 3.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 4 is way better than 3. I can't believe that. I still can't believe that series is dead. Still
it's upsetting.
Man, Onimusha. That was really the first awesome game on PS2. Everyone forgets that. That was the first really fucking awesome PS2 game. There were some good PS2 games before that, but like I really like the Bouncer and stuff like that. But Onimusha was fucking awesome, and I can't. Oh,
and they fixed the controls in 3, which makes 3 awesome.
3 was bad because of the setting.
3 was awesome because of the setting. And Gene Reno.
Yeah, Gene Reno was in it. I was like, oh my god, this is awful.
Oh man,
just awful.
Pros and cons, Colin.